Around the town looking at all the art galleries so you guys can see what's on. The first one we're looking at is on at the McDougall, just opened last week, from the little-known Canterbury artist, Captain Edwyn Temple. Curator Neil Roberts joins me here this evening. Now, I've not heard the name Edwyn Temple until a few days ago.
Well, most people probably haven't, because he's been a relatively obscure individual since about the 1900s. So it's really pulling someone well out of the past into the present.
He was very influential on the Canterbury scene, the Canterbury art scene.
Well, so influential probably is one word, but I would say that he was perhaps proactive in the sense that he was responsible for, I think, engaging a number of people to form the Canterbury Society of Arts in 1880, almost about, I suppose, 8 months after he arrived in Canterbury.
Perhaps enthusiastic is a better word.
Enthusiastic, probably a better word, yeah.
Now, the exhibition, 155 works, quite an undertaking.
Yeah, but there were another 400-odd works out there, so it was a bit of a job boiling it down to what we've got. His family had actually collected together and saved many, many works, which is unusual, really, for an artist of that period. The business of getting it together wasn't that difficult because I was given the location of a lot of the works. It wasn't like a lot of shows where you've got to go out and source and find them, you know.
Isn't that wonderful to know that the family has kept a solid record of where the works are and what they're up to?
Yes, well, most of them are in the family, so they haven't really gone beyond. So
one impression I got from the exhibition was that it was more, not just a pictorial history of colonial Canterbury.
Yes, well, that impression could be gained because it was a way, perhaps, I put it together to give that idea that there was that element in it, yes.
Oh, very clever, then it worked for me.
Well, it's the way, I think it's the way that people like to see historical work that's local, just to see how it touches their region, yeah.
Now, you've put it together in a way that you can see the variety of works grouped. Tell me a wee bit about that.
Well, there are phases in Temple's life, when he was in the army, and later on when, of course, he left the army and was in the south of England, and then, of course, when he came to New Zealand, and then travelled around a lot in the South Island, and all of these sort of are reflected in the work that he did. But then aside from that, there's all the imaginative work that he did as well. He was a compulsive sketcher. He would draw on anything, any piece of paper at hand, you know, letters, telegrams, wrapping paper, whatever, you know. He seemed to be really very involved with his art.
And a delightful sense of humour.
Yeah, very, very, very strong sort of almost sardonic wit he had. And as well, you know, this particular image is on board the Rangatiki on the way out to New Zealand in 1879. And obviously there's been a problem there, and that he sort of represents the trial almost as a Gilbert and Sullivan sort of event. Yeah.
Now, trained in Italy, but
not really trained, because you see, he was the grandson of the 9th Baronet of Stowe, and of course he himself could have got the title later on, but declined it. So he was trained by a private tutor in Italy for about a year. That's all the training, really, apart from his school training at rugby school. Perhaps as a drawing master may have helped him, but not much training.
Well, that explains that one for me, because I was wondering how he spent time in Italy training, but then went to the army. I guess it's
No, it was really, he was on holiday, literally, with his father's cousin, the Princess Pandolfina, and she engaged a tutor. So, you know.
How wonderful.
Yeah. But, well, he came from this sort of background. It was very interesting, you know. Yeah.
Did you find out a lot about him as you were researching?
Yes. He actually kept a journal from 1883 through till 1904, which was very helpful. The family had records, so, you know, it wasn't hard to sort of piece together his life. There are some gaps, of course. This is an interesting one. It represents his family. The monkeys are the children. He's the leopard coming down. It was a very, you know, he was a very Victorian father, and this is the relationship. quite quirky in some respects, but, you know, unusual for a lot of artists of this period in New Zealand. Not perhaps outside, but certainly here.
I initially thought was that perhaps as an artist he wasn't as well recognised because of his style. But do you think it was just who
I think it was because he really just painted. He just painted. He exhibited, certainly, and exhibited outside New Zealand, but he didn't really paint to be a major professional artist. That wasn't his objective. It was really just to paint. And I suppose that he just slipped into obscurity very quickly because he stopped exhibiting. And that was, you know...
And painted purely for the pleasure.
Really, I think that's a lot of it. But that was part of colonial society anyway, and he is sort of representative in a way of what a lot of painters were at this time. You know, we only had about 3 or 4 professional artists, so-called, in Christchurch in this period in the 1880s. This is remarkable, this fire piece, because nobody painted bush on fire. They painted the devastation of bush. They never actually painted fire. And, you know, he tackled these sort of subjects, which were unusual.
Perhaps he enjoyed the challenge, wanted to do something out of the norm.
Maybe, yes. But a lot of it is very typical of the time. So you've got this contrast, which makes him a fairly interesting sort of artist to deal with.
There was one work in particular, the Edwyn work.
Ah, yes, yes. Well, that's a direct sort of illustration from a passage in Samuel Butler's book, in which the main character is crossing the divide, and these figures are towering, these giants, as it were, and the noise they're making. And he got that feeling. But in a way it's quite modern, because an artist that I walked around with the other day said, you know, it's quite expressionistic in a way. You know, so there are little touches through there. Yeah.
That was something that I felt too, that there was aspects to it that surprised me, that I wasn't expecting.
Yes.
I enjoyed that.
Yes.
So is this sort of, for you, was this a challenge to work with, or did it just flow naturally? An easy?
Well, it was an interesting one. You know, it's one in the whole year of program. It was good to be able to pull back from, as I said initially, from the past, someone who had slipped into obscurity. That was the pleasure of it. A challenge, yes, in the sense there was so much. It's usually the other way around.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh well, that's lovely, and a very well put together exhibition, Neil. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming down this evening. We'll catch up with you next time.
Okay.
After the break, we're looking at Philip Trustom's work that's just around the corner from us in the Convention Centre. Stunning. Back in a moment.
Thinking photos, think Church Corner. Thinking photos, think Church Corner, Fuji Image Plaza.